become natural background levels. Further measurements...
That was the chief of the IEA reporting on Fukushima nuclear reactor, saying that the situation is still serious but does appear to have been stabilising. Well, the last time Libya saw overt public dissent was almost 43 years ago in the uprising that ended up with Colonel Gaddafi in power. Nicholas Hagger was an eyewitness to the revolution, and he predicted then that the new leader would still be around in 4 decades' time.
And Nicholas Hagger joins us now. Good afternoon to you. So
Good afternoon.
Colonel Gaddafi that you witnessed in 1969 and the Colonel Gaddafi we're seeing now, has anything changed?
I would say not, except, of course, that he was very young then. Short back and sides, 27 years old, Sandhurst military officer. He came to the university shortly after the revolution and a couple of times. And in fact, the second time, my students let us down by rushing towards him and flinging their arms around him and kissing him, which he hated, and he was flung up against me, and I had his head on my shoulder with his military cap while they fought to get the situation back.
And you said then that you predicted he would be in power for 40 years. You've obviously been proved to be right. What was it that you saw in him?
2 things, probably. A very clever and cunning leader, potential leader, and also a ruthless terror manipulator. And I've got a story to illustrate both, if that's all right. In the first case, I was actually an eyewitness of a revolution that was being planned before the Gaddafi revolution. It was all to do with my landlord, who was in the army, who invited me to various parties that Libyan ministers were present at. And it became apparent that Dr. Muntasir, the son of the first leader of Libya, was going to be the Gaddafi figure, the leader, and he was British ambassador at the time. Now, I had a side job writing newspaper articles, some of which are in the appendix of the book. And through that channel, I interviewed Dr. Muntasir here in London about 2 weeks before the revolution, and met one of the ministers on my return, and they said it's going to be September the 5th. And I was told that there was going to be a particular piece of music that was going to be played at 11 o'clock, and that Abdusalam Abu Shwarib would be the leader of the military side of the revolution. All this happened on September the 1st. I went to work and couldn't understand why the university gates were closed, and looked at my diary, and I got the right date to go back. And then I saw somebody raising a gun and firing, wearing plimsolls across the road. And I had to go back through the revolution. The revolution had come up behind me as I went to work, so I had to drive back through it, through tanks and armoured cars and so on. But what Gaddafi did was he mimicked our revolution. So the music was played at 11 o'clock, spot on for this one.
He started it early. Yeah.
He announced that Abdusalam Abu Shwarib was the new leader, and for a week the West believed it, and it was on BBC4 as being so. And that is a measure of the man. When he's talking about ceasefires and so on, the message is be very, very wary. And then afterwards, because I was known for being a journalist as well, he said 3 times, some journalists will be executed, some will be imprisoned, some will be punished. And at a very early stage, I was taken to the radio station where the military censor had all my articles, the centre pages, 2-page spreads that I did. And I was given a stern ticking off and told I was going to be followed for the next few months, which I was, in a Forn Volkswagen the whole time. Gaddafi came to the university twice, and on one of the occasions he looked at me very, very hard in the eyes, and he said, some journalists will be executed. And the following June, in June 1970, I was arrested in the middle of the night and driven to a villa, and a Berber, whose name was Mohammed Barassi, who was head of Al Thawra, the revolutionary newspaper, went and got his Luger. There were 4 other people with him, and I sat for 3 hours between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. and talked my way out of being executed. And that is, again, the measure of Gaddafi deliberately intimidating journalists, even in those days, 42 years ago.
Where does the eccentricity fit in your view? the hats and the odd appearances. And
I didn't see that. He was short back and sides in my time, with the military hat and impeccable uniform, and very much the Sandhurst officer. I don't know whether power just went to his head a bit and he felt he could do anything and he wanted to be with it and so on. I know he's had a facelift.
But do you think that eccentricity, the Bedouin tent, the appearance of Gaddafi has actually led us to underestimate him because we all miss him as a comic figure?
I agree completely. In fact, the Bedouin tent, he was a Berber living in a Bedouin tent, and really he's remained true to his roots. And we see it as eccentric when he wants to put a tent up in Paris or wherever, but actually he's just remaining true to his origins. And yes, I think we are in danger of underestimating him.
But why, in the end, anyone remains leader? Because people, they may be afraid, but ultimately they're prepared to go along with him to support him. Why? What's in it for his supporters in Libya?
At present, or 40 years ago?
Present, no.
At present, I think they're so enmeshed in it. He's created a military dictatorship and lasted 5 times longer than Cromwell did, and Cromwell was worn out after 9 years and died, but Gaddafi's still going after 42 years of sleeping in a different place each night and so on. And I think he's built up with the skill of a Cromwell or a Napoleon, a machine that has a lot of people dependent on him, and who they all go down with him, and they're not going to go down with him. And I can see him surviving this. It could be that Libya's split between the East and the West, which would be a pity in terms of what happened 40 years ago. And it was the worry that those who wanted to have the revolution before Gaddafi had. Whatever happens, there mustn't be a split between East and West. Muntasser is the figure to hold it together.
Well, Nicholas Hagger's book is called The Libyan Revolution. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Nicholas. Yeah. Well, that was Boulton Co. Tomorrow we'll be getting inflation figures as the budget looms. It's coming up on Wednesday, of course, and we will be live in Libya as the conflict develops.
And, of course, this afternoon we're going to have full coverage of that debate in the House of Commons on Britain's decision to join in the military assault on Libya.